So good morning, everybody. This is our fourth and final webinar of this series with Janice Kaiser. We're going to be looking at today the social and emotional learning of students in pre-K and moving to K as well. So Janice will guide us through her display, her PowerPoint, her notes for us. And in the meantime, I'm going to work on sending you all an email. So just heads up that that'll be coming. So welcome, Janice. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. And yeah, as Nicole said, we'll be talking about social and emotional learning this morning, but very specifically as it relates to our current situation and bringing children and families back together at the start of the school year and so on. So I work at the American Institutes for Research, and we are a nonprofit organization that does a wide range of behavioral research studies and projects, and typically spanning birth to death, honestly, and every age group in between. And I have a background in early childhood education myself. So thank you for being here with us this morning. I hope that you will feel very comfortable chiming in, sharing your ideas, your experiences, plans for the new school year as we go along, things like that. There'll be several spots along the way for us to chat and to really hear from you all. So welcome. I do appreciate you being here. And this was the session that we were going to do a few weeks back, and it got tagged on to the end because I was ill. So, all right, let's start here this morning. So if you wouldn't mind in the chat box, if you would share your name and 3 hashtags that describe how you're feeling about the new school year. And I have shared mine. My 3 are let the games begin, let's get this party started, and may the odds be ever in your favor. So if you don't mind, take a moment and add your hashtags to our chat box. I'm trying to move my stuff over here real quick so I can see a little better. There we go. Whoops. All right. So our plan for this morning is to discuss social and emotional learning within the context of our current events, the pandemic in particular. But also I think that there are some places around within the PowerPoint where we might be able to talk about some of the social and emotional discord and things that are going on related to social injustice and some of the other things that children and families are talking about and seeing and those types of things. So we'll kind of broad spectrum in terms of, you know, how is the pandemic affecting us and students and families, but also some of the other very important issues that we are seeing and talking about right now. And then I want to share some ideas around building capacity to connect with students and families, in particular at the beginning of the school year. But you know, these ideas are certainly ones that you can use throughout the year. And I hope that you will share as well. You guys have some wonderful ideas and resources too. And then I mentioned last time we were together that through the REL Southwest, which is part of our organization at American Institutes for Research, we put together a pretty large database of resources to support teachers and families with distance learning and sort of all of the things that go on around trying to provide distance learning for students who are pre-K through first, second grade, early childhood for sure. So I'll kind of walk us through those documents and give you a feel for how to sort it and what you can do with it. And then we'll also look at a handout that we hope you'll share with families. It is, we are sending it to you this morning as a PDF. You're welcome to distribute it far and wide. We'd love for you to do that, but it's specifically about supporting young learners and their well-being at home. So that is our plan for this morning. I want to start right here. Oh, actually, I want to take a look at some of these hashtags real quick here. So what do we have? We have some anxious and some excited and cautious. Yes, for sure. Would like more time. I think everybody's kind of feeling that way, aren't we? Excited, nervous, we can do this. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing these. And as you look through, you might see overlap. Is 2020 over yet? I love that. No, seems like it should be, right? So let's take a look right here at this handout. And actually, Nicole, I'm realizing I didn't pull this out as an individual handout, but I will. So it'll be much easier for you to see kind of after the fact. So what this graphic is representing is the 6,000 hour learning gap. I'm curious, kind of by show of hands, has anybody seen this before or worked with it at all? Okay. Kind of interesting. So we have in the first column, Jack's family has the means to help him and to explore all kinds of learning opportunities. And the second child is Mike, who was born into poverty with fewer chances and opportunities to grow and discover. So what it's showing us here is by the time students reach 6th grade, middle class students have likely spent about 6,000 or more hours learning than students who are born into poverty and challenging circumstances. So if we begin to break this down, I thought the numbers were pretty interesting. Parents spend about 220 hours more in Jack's family, working with him, reading to him, helping him with homework, and so on, as compared to Mike's family. In preschool, we're looking at 1,395 more hours spent when children don't have a strong pre-K background. It's the difference between having and not having a pre-K education, and so on. After school hours, really high, 3,000 hours. Kids like Mike lose more ground in grade school, and so they're significantly less likely to be able to enroll in these enriching activities, either because of financing, because of time, all kinds of different circumstances. I don't think that the fact that these learning gaps and these opportunity gaps exist is shocking to any of us. We know this, we've talked about this. But when we begin to look at it in terms of hours, what do you think? That's some pretty big differences, would you say? Yeah. So as we think about this too, I sort of see this graphic as a really strong reminder of how critically important it is to understand where students are coming from and how their home life circumstances absolutely do affect their school life and how they're feeling, how they're able to learn, socialize with one another, and so on. Any thoughts or first impressions as you look at this chart and you look at these hours and differences? Anyone care to share?
Hi, this is Mary Beth. I know there's also been a ton of research on the vocabulary levels and the amount of language kids have based on, kids who have more interactive parents and more enrichment are going to have grander vocabularies than those kids who may not even have a adult at home after school, so they're already at a disadvantage. Well, I guess they have adults when they're really little pre-K kids, you hope, but when they come to school, that they're behind already. So yeah, it's pretty sobering, pretty sad.
It really is. And this 6,000 hours, just to put it in perspective, is equivalent to about 5 years in a classroom. That's big, right? Any other thoughts on this before we move on? And we will share the PowerPoint presentation with you, excuse me, afterwards, and I'll pull this out as an individual graphic, and that way you can use it more as a handout. Okay. All right.
I do have one more thought.
Yeah, jump in.
I'm thinking about with COVID-19, that I know that our pre-K has what we call Family Fridays, and we sometimes have a field trip and they have to have a caregiver or family member, or we have activities at school, we celebrate learning, and it is pretty doubtful we're going to get to have those perhaps later in the year, but I worry about, I know they're talking about all the ways to engage parents via computers, but I guess that's one of my worries for going back to school is the lack of that. You know, if we're going to have less family members, they're not going to be able to say, come on in, sit in the classroom, that kind of thing. Maybe we will be able to after a few months, but I didn't know if anybody else had thoughts on that, because it sounds more like you're going to have one parent drop off, and if we have small cohorts, it's going to limit that.
Yeah. What size cohorts are you thinking that you all will have, or maybe you already know this? How many students?
The main Academy Pediatrics chapter of that is suggesting 10 or less. So.
Yeah, and that is what your school district is intending to do for pre-K.
Yeah, yes. I haven't got it all finalized, but yeah.
It's a moving target, isn't it?
The older grades, they talked and met about yesterday, and I have a meeting with our principal. So, but I have been told it looks like we will have not remote learning, which is good for pre-K.
Yeah, as we've talked about, that's challenging. Right. All right. So what is social and emotional learning, and what does it mean to be socially and emotionally ready to learn? Let's break this down just a little bit. What are your thoughts around this? Care to jump in? Don't be shy.
I'll jump in again.
Go right ahead.
Things is for a child to feel comfortable, separating from a parent or caregiver, that they feel, confident enough with meeting with a new adult. I mean, there may be some, little bit of separation anxiety, but it's not long-lived. That they can regulate their emotions, that they don't get over the top crazy silly, over the top crazy upset. So I guess starting
you don't have those extremes on one end or the other. Right, exactly. Yeah. And this idea around readiness is always sort of fascinating to me, because we can define readiness in terms of the things like you just described. Can they keep up with their personal belongings? Can they attend to their needs? Can they verbalize what it is that they need or want? Can they, explain a situation that's happened? Are they ill? Are they hurt? Do they want a toy, or whatever that might be? But we also know that readiness varies greatly from child to child, from, children within the same families don't achieve this readiness sort of status or milestone at the same time or in the same ways. It can be quite different. And then, of course, when we look across classrooms that are, 18 to 24 students in a classroom, you're looking at maybe 18 to 24 different children and readiness levels and so on, maturity levels and all those kinds of things. But how do you know? How do you know that children are socially and emotionally ready to start this new school year? That they have the tools in their toolkit to manage strong emotions and so on. Besides what's been mentioned, is there anything specific that you look for as you meet your new students for the new school year and you start to sort of assess, where are they? How ready are they? What kinds of things are you looking for?
I think it would be similar to what Mary Beth was saying. Like, you would be watching their body language and their energy. If their hands are in their mouth and they're tight, then they're anxious, right? They're not ready to learn. They need some support for comfort and safety, knowing they're safe, and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as we think about readiness in years past and readiness this year, what are some of the major differences that you would anticipate that you might see this go around? Not only for students, but their families and even ourselves as we prepare to go back in the classroom and or to teach online, whatever that scenario might be. What's it going to look like? What do you expect?
I think parents are going to have more anxiety about school and the whole process, which is clearly going to come through with the children too. So even more so, we need to work for parents to feel comfortable and safe with the kids coming to school so that they can share that feeling with their children.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And that's exactly what we're hearing. And, as I talk with families and I participate in conversations with teachers and just really starting to think, what is this going to look like? There is quite a lot of anxiety swirling around for everyone, different from the normal back to school jitters and excitement, right? So this is going to be quite a different scenario, I think, for all of us.
I also think that it's people around them too, like when kiddos are in different environments and how people are talking about COVID, and some kids are going to be really anxious about it because they're going to be afraid to get near kids, near anybody, talk to any. It's going to be so different. So I think it's really important that we model for them how to feel safe and that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely do know what you mean. Yes. And, we all know as well that children see and hear everything, even when we think they aren't listening or that they aren't watching, right? And so even the most careful of adults are having these conversations amongst themselves in their homes and, with their families and so on. And children are hearing it. And so, rightfully so, they're going to have some heightened concerns, maybe some anxiety, some fear, things like that. And of course, we'll all be doing our best to comfort them and help them settle in and all of that. But our awareness is such an important part of this process. So we do have some pretty notable changes that are always present from year to year. So these are not brand new things, but they're going to be just tenfold this year. Things like daily routines that have been kind of all over the map now. Lack of predictability. Isn't this true? We left in March thinking this was a 2-week gig at home. And here it's been, 5 months. quite a different situation than what we expected to have happen. Increased fears about everything, personal safety, health, safety of our loved ones, all of those types of things. And this is huge, extended periods of isolation where students are feeling very disconnected from their peers. They might be feeling disconnected from their parents, even within the same home, or their other family members, because everybody is working so hard and so challenged to try to keep up with work and school and some sense of normalcy, that what often happens is we compartmentalize everybody in the house, and you've got somebody in the office working, somebody's in the den, somebody's in the bedroom, and so you might be within proximity to one another, but you're certainly not necessarily interacting, and that isolation will begin to wear on children as well as adults. I know I'm feeling it myself as our organization announced we won't be going back to the office until at least after the first of the year, things like that. I did see a meme the other day that I thought was kind of clever, and it said, gosh, I can't believe that spring break's almost over. This has been the longest spring break of our lives, hasn't it? And not a whole lot of break. But yeah, these are definitely circumstances I think that we will have to address head on. These are the types of things that will be affecting every one of us. And that's not all. The list goes on. So in some cases, we have students who have had family members who have been sick, or maybe they were sick at some point themselves with COVID-19, or maybe they've lost a loved one, or they are aware of a neighbor, a friend, someone that even if they didn't know that person themselves, again, children are hearing and seeing and experiencing all of these things going on around them, and they certainly will feed off of those fears and anxiety. Limited access to food and shelter. Every school district in every state that I've interacted with over the last several months has made such a great effort to try to make sure that students who need to receive their meals and their snacks and the supplies and the things that they're needing to continue on during this time. But we also know that some children are falling through the gaps, right? That there are children that we have lost connection with, either by phone or in person or online, or however it is that schools and teachers have been trying. So there seems to be a fairly large question mark still lingering as to whether or not children have had the nourishment, the things that they're going to need to not only have food and shelter, but also these ongoing safety and security issues, which we would anticipate to be larger maybe than years past. What other challenges or barriers would you add to this list? Anything more?
I think another thing, Janice, that I know I've heard from teachers lately is, we talk often about that summer slide, but now we sort of have that COVID slide. This lack of learning, or the lack of sustained learning since the closure. Yeah, I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, and we don't, and again, like all of these things, we don't even know the full extent or how these different circumstances are going to impact individual students, much less a whole cohort of students, right? What else would you expect to be on the list?
I wonder about play skills with kids, and if we're going to have children at least 3 to 6 feet apart and not share items, or if kids haven't played with other kids for 3 or 4 months, have just maybe play with an older brother.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about that, and then I'm also curious about how I, as a teacher, am going to react And yeah, that I'm going to be anxious about that, the first.
Right.
I know some other teachers who are really anxious about that and talked about putting really little kids at desks. And I said, we can't have pre-K just at desks. So
Yeah.
I wonder about those kind of play skills and
Yeah. Yeah. As we've talked before too, this is just such an unnatural way to approach these early grades and to try to set up effective learning environments for young children, right? And at the same time, all of this is going on with our students. These are the same exact feelings and circumstances that we're dealing with. So it's absolutely not isolated to just our students.
Janice, I was just gonna say that myself because typically I'm not a person that gets anxiety, and I've had a lot of anxiety, through remote learning, making sure that the kids are getting enough and the parents are getting enough.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go back in the fall, the whole social piece for kiddos, are we going to be able to have any kind of centers? How is that going to look? How are we going to be able to, socialize, have the kids socialize with each other? It's still 3 to 6 feet apart. Just trying to think about how we're going to set up our classrooms. There's just so much, and still don't know yet. So
yeah,
it's just a little bit of anxiety around that, I guess.
Yeah, and so much of this really is going to revolve around our self-awareness and awareness of others, and really being able to monitor students and their progress within the classroom, and how how we're responding to them, because it is a lot. The anxiety is real, and certainly folks who haven't traditionally or in the past really dealt with anxiety and are now, right? They're doing that right now, and it's a frightening thing. So then, as we look at the list, I'm going to go back just for a moment, because what we think could very well happen is we will see these things all, from both sides, all of these barriers and issues affecting children and adults. We will see them at the beginning of the year, and we may see them over and over and over again in this very unpredictable time where we don't know if we're going to be back in school and we're going to hit the ground running and it's going to be fantastic, no more interruptions, or are we going to have some of these cycles where we're in school and then we're not? Are we back to remote, or are we not? So thinking about and being aware of these challenges is more important than ever, and really keeping a close watch on how students are adjusting and how we're adjusting. And most definitely families are going to be juggling their own fears, their work, all of these types of things, right?
Janice, I would like to add a couple of things to that, and that I think that for us to be able to really help children and families, teachers need to have a good handle on our routines, what they may be or are, and our safety, as well as practicing protocols, and that way we can lead, and we're going to be the role models no matter what. That's very important. I also think that routines, rituals are going to be extremely important, and then we're going to have to set that off right off from the get-go and have those rituals so that children will remember, they'll be able to sing them, perform them, walk them, and it'll be in their heart, so that when we have to do remote, or if we do this a different way, that they will at least have that to rely on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your description that these routines need to be in their hearts. That's such a positive way to put this. And I think you're exactly right. That's where we need to be. And it's not easy, right? None of this is going to come easy. But the more we are aware, and the more we think about it, plan for it, and practice it in some ways, the better off we'll be in the long run. But again, these are things that we may see more than once So it's definitely not going to be a one and done. All right, so at this point though, if you think about families, if you could ask them to do one thing to prepare their child for this school year, what would that be? What would you want them to do? What do you think?
I think maybe learning about their bubble space, their awareness around, so that
Yeah.
they should know that, maybe putting their hands out like this is your bubble space, so they can start to get awareness, but without making them anxious about being too close to somebody. Make it a fun way to kind of, get that boundary, I guess.
Yep.
And I would say is get them there, whatever the there is, get them to the home visit that's online, if that's what it is, or at a park. Get them to the class. Show up on the Zoom if we're having that, help the child get on, because we can do a lot, but we need the families to just get them there, and then we can work as a partnership.
Yeah, we do. We do. And Carrie, I agree, talking in a positive way about school. This is really huge. This is always a big deal, right? It's even more of a big deal now. And we acknowledge the fear, anxiety, and uncertainty that's already going to exist. But the more that children can overhear the good and the positive, the better. This sort of harkens back to that classroom management behavior guidance idea of letting children overhear you saying positive things about them intentionally. Same kind of deal. Let them hear that this is going to be okay and that we're all here together. We're here to do it together. And this is challenging for some families because if the parents or whoever's living in the home, if they've had a difficult experience in school, if it wasn't positive for them growing up, or even as adults interacting with teachers in schools, then, some of that could potentially carry over into their conversations, their feelings, their anxieties, and so on with their children. What else would you want parents to do to prepare their children for this school year? Anything else?
I think you talked about the idea of getting parents to have their children on schedule, starting to schedule, and maybe even some kind of little chart on the refrigerator, or some kind of just being a little more organized, where I know our days have been, at least my days haven't been very organized lately.
Right.
Getting them ready for that.
Back in a routine.
Yeah.
And for some, we know might be their first experience with these kinds of school routines, especially our pre-K kiddos, right? In Maine, do you have 3-year-olds at all in your pre-K programs? Do some school districts do that? Yeah.
Yeah, some school districts have 3-year-olds, especially partnerships with Head Start, but typically standalone pre-K programs are strictly 4.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, one of the ways that we have at AIR that we've been working with families and trying to really help them understand how they can support their students at home with from March until now and moving forward is by trying to really give them resources and tools. And our team put together this hierarchy of needs, which you all have seen in other forms. But what we've done at the bottom of the pyramid is helping families to have the basic needs that they need, as well as their children, to be able to provide for the very essentials, the food, the shelter, and so on, creating a very safe and quiet space for students to think about school, get into their projects, that learning from home is is important. It's doable in all kinds of ways, but really making sure that families understand that that basic level is attending to the need just to have a safe place to have school, so that it's different from the living room, the den, those kinds of things, if possible. And we know that's not always possible, but we hope to. Also helping parents to understand where their children are in terms of feeling safe, feeling healthy. They have a strong sense of well-being. They have a strong sense of confidence about what's going to happen with this school year, whether it's coming back in person or if it's an online program, whatever those circumstances might be. We want families to respond to their children in loving ways and to help them to feel like they belong, that they belong within the home learning environment as well as in the school environment. So this has become quite an interesting conversation with families, because if families are trying to work, if they've got children in multiple age brackets, oftentimes it's the kiddos that are in the pre-K to kindergarten, first grade, where it might be viewed that it's not as important to, spend time at school doing school things and so on. And what we really want to convey to families is it is important. It's important for all of the students, all of the children in the household, but that they are able to engage in their schoolwork and learning activities and even their play in a loving way, as well as feeling like they really truly belong. And this gets harder and harder as we have distance learning meetings, Zoom meetings, and things like that with young children. I'm not sure if I shared with you all early on. I may have that one of my colleagues in Oklahoma, kindergarten teacher, shared that she was continually having difficulty connecting with a family, and then when she would connect either by phone or through online meetings, the child seemed sort of standoffish in the April-May timeframe. Finally, the family was able to get to the bottom of it, and the child thought that they were the only one who was not allowed to go to school. The child didn't realize that everybody was at home. Right. So there was this fear, anxiety, no sense of belonging, those types of things. It really made it challenging for this kiddo to understand what was happening. And then once that came out, the parents and the teacher were better able to work with that student and so on. But it's just so important that students have that strong sense of self, and that they know that they're valued, and that we're working on their self-esteem now and always. None of this is groundbreaking to any of us who've been in education, but I think it is extremely important that we're talking to families about this too, that we're conveying to them how important it is, and that we're looking for opportunities, helping families to find those opportunities too, where their child can grow personally, and that we can play upon their strengths, we can support those strengths, we can do the kinds of things and say the kinds of things that children need to hear in order to have strong self-confidence and to feel like they can succeed at what we're trying to do. So this handout, I think that Nicole sent it already, is, what is it? It's 3 pages if you only do fronts, but we really want you to put this in the hands of families, if you would, just to give them a sense of, I can do this, and we're here to help you do it, and so on. Thoughts about, in particular, this idea of building students' sense of self and their belonging within the classroom, and any strategies that you all have already talked about in your teams. Are you planning for? Usually this time of year begins with some kind of an open house, something like that. Some of those are happening in some cases and some are not. what are you all doing to establish that sense of belonging and trust?
For me, I'm going to be starting with Zoom meetings with each individual family to make a connection with them and to find out what a child's interest is, and just really try to build that relationship with them before they come in the classroom. Normally I send out a letter, but now I'm going to be face-to-face too, because I think that's one positive thing about remote learning is the whole Zoom and how you can connect with families so they can see face-to-face is more important than just a letter. We're also going to be we're getting a team together to do a virtual open house to talk about, school and what, expectations, and trying to make it really fun for them so they can connect.
Right. Good. This document is slated to be translated into Spanish, I know, and I'll double check to see if that's been done yet. I don't have it yet, but I will take a look, and if I can get my hands on it, I will share it. I'll also find out what other languages they might be translating it into. Anybody else have plans for establishing that sense of belonging? And
we usually have an open house in the spring and then something before school, but even with small groups, the latest I've heard is that that's probably not going to happen. So I would like to do like a little video of our physical classrooms and the outdoor area, and then I have a couple of puppets and some characters in the classroom. We do a thing on Tuesdays called Try It Tuesday, and we have vegetable and fruit friends. So I thought I would introduce some of these characters, and my ed tech and I are meeting today, and we're going to talk about some of our ideas, but I wanted them to get an idea of actually physically where they will be when we talk about the word school. And then I'd also really like, when school starts, to open up the conversation and find out, what they think has been going on, and, what do they think about wearing masks and what's happening with this, and just, on a really, obviously pre-K level, but because sometimes, like you say, the kids have such a very different reality. The pediatricians I listened to talked about wearing masks and not having what they call mask breaks, but just really starting the year out like, this is when we wear our special masks, and we don't wear them when we eat, but not like it's going to be a break. And I also thought it would be fun, I don't know if we can have shields instead of masks, that if kids could design something, like they're a mermaid or a unicorn, or kind of personalize their whatever kind of facial protection they're wearing, that might make them feel more comfortable. Be kind of fun.
Yeah. As I'm out and about, I rarely see young children, even up to grade 3, wearing masks out in public. I see adults doing that, but this is going to be new and different for a lot of students. I also am keenly aware that a lot of families have kept their children at home as much as possible since March, and so this idea of coming back into school, very much feels different, new, all of those types of things. So it's not just the typical beginning of school nerves, right? We're going to have all kinds of these things going on, and of course, how we respond to students when they take their masks off, or they do something silly, or they're sticking pencils in the side to make whiskers, or whatever it is that they might be doing. That response from the adults in the room will make or break, right? Those feelings about this, and we can unintentionally build up even more fear, more uncertainty, all of those kinds of things. It's a lot. So I wanted to share with you this database because, and I'm aware of our time, I have a couple of things I want to share with you about this. So when we first set out to put this together, it was at the request of a State Department of Education, and they really wanted teachers to have some resources that they could use themselves, but they could also share with families. And so we set about to do this. It was just really important to us that the types of things that ended up on this list, or in this database rather, were high quality, and to the extent possible had all been vetted and peer reviewed either by What Works Clearinghouse or other reputable research organizations and so on. However, we also did find a number of resources that we felt were very high quality, but maybe they weren't vetted through What Works Clearinghouse, and maybe they hadn't been fully peer reviewed. They didn't exclude them from being a good resource to share. So so you'll see both. And we tried also to make sure that what we were looking at were things that did not cost a lot of money. Most everything on the list is free, but not everything. So let me try to make this a little bit bigger. And you guys will be able to explore this on your own. You'll have, complete access. This is shareable. You certainly can pass it on to colleagues, to families, to whomever. Whoops. So you'll start with, there's an overview of the database, what's included. And I know this is super tiny. And then we sorted into things that are free, that they maybe did not have all of the vetting and so on. But as I said, they felt good and worthy to share. So we have the resource name, we give a description of the resource, and then I'm going to slide down over here so you can, whoops, that doesn't work so great. Hang on one sec. Who developed it? Harvard, PBS, Khan Academy. These are names that you're familiar with, I believe. And then we tried to break it down into what type. Are these instructional materials geared for schools and teachers? Can these activities and ideas be implemented fairly easily by families, or is it really, going to take a little bit more? In some cases, there are printable materials that might be useful. What languages are they in, and so on. And then we also tried to break it down into the age groups, and we were targeting pre-K through third grade when we initially started this, but some of the websites and resources go up through grade 12. So it's quite a lot. And as you can see, we just tried to hit every demographic we could think of, because this was all taking place. I think we started doing this work April, when all of the, everybody was scrambling to try to put resources together to try to figure out, what is the best way to help families at home when they want to support their young learners, but also teachers. And so our hope through all of this is that if families felt empowered to be a part of their child's education, and they had resources that they could feel confident were good resources, that they were doable, and weren't, some college textbook out there, then parents would be more likely to use them. They would be more likely to work with their student, and in return, their confidence level would go up, as would their students, and that children would enjoy it, that they wouldn't be missing out so much on some of the learning activities at home. But we've provided some links so you can go directly to the resource and check it out. And like I said, so these are free. And then there's a number of resources on here, and this is super tiny, same sort of demographic information, the resource, a description, who is it for, and so on. But this sheet is, everything on here has been peer reviewed. So there are research studies to back it up. There's years and years of strong evidence that the ideas and suggestions within the documents are good ones, and so on. And then we also have provided a tab. This is also teeny tiny. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger so we can look at a few of these. Just really describing how we selected the various resources that are on here. Well, that's not going to let me slide over. There we go. So you'll have this as an Excel spreadsheet. As you get into it and you start digging around in there, I'd love to have any feedback that you have about it. I think there's around 180 different resources in here, so it's quite a lot. It also is set up so that if you want to add resources of your own, things that you've come across or your school district has put together, you can easily add to this database and just keep it as a living document that you can use over and over again. So far, we've had some pretty good feedback on it. So I'll look forward to hearing what you guys think about it when you have time to review. All right. This gives you an idea. This will be a little bit easier, I think, for you to see the various search fields that are within. So whether it's printable, who's it targeted towards, and so on. And same with the What Works Clearinghouse stuff. We tried to stay away from resources that required things like a membership fee, those types of things. There may be some fees associated with downloading a toolkit or a planning guide or something like that, but generally speaking, we tried to stay away from anything that looked like a membership. So one of the things that we continue to talk about and be concerned about is this need to really connect with families in a way that maybe we haven't, like to a level we haven't necessarily thought about or planned for in the past. This is like on warp speed. But these are the types of things that are going to help families feel socially or mostly emotionally ready to send their children to school. These are the types of things that we can do for ourselves that will help us to feel ready for this school year. And most definitely as the adults around children are confident, ready, they will be too. So we want to create that sense of community. We know that's going to look very different as it has. Reaching out during the summer before it's time to actually begin lessons and get into the schoolwork, whether it's online or whether it's in school, but just as, you know, building those relationships and establishing some sense of familiarity early on is important. Routine. This, to me, honestly, I think this is going to be one of the most challenging things because children right now have become accustomed to being at home. A lot of them are on their own schedules, doing a lot of things that make them happy when they want to do them, right? And so sort of shifting them away from that mindset and back into a school routine can cause some additional anxiety and unrest and uncertainty for students. But the more we can set routines and stick to them, the better off we'll be. Personal sharing, I think, is going to be more important this go around than maybe it has been in the past. And this is a little bit tricky, I think, because again, we know that students are listening and overhearing and feeding off of our emotions and our responses to what we're seeing on the news or what we're talking about, all of these types of things. So it's important to talk with students and let them know that I'm feeling some of the same things that you are, but we're in this together and we're going to work together to establish our new classroom, our new friend group, and so on. I thought this was interesting when you brought up mask breaks. I was listening into a webinar the other day around how do we get students, young students in particular, to wear their masks, to keep them on, to wear them properly, to feel comfortable and not self-conscious about it. And no surprise, it comes back to us modeling, right? And being comfortable in our own skin and willing to wear our mask and to verbalize to students as we're putting our masks on and keeping them on, and as we're using sanitizer and washing our hands and cleaning, that we're telling them, this is what I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing it, and this is to help us all to be safe, and this is, you know, so that we can all continue to be together. All of these sorts of reassuring phrases and ways of helping them to know that it's okay and it's going to be okay and we can do this. Shared projects is really referring to looking for opportunities that the school, the families, and the child can get involved and engage. Parent nights and those fun evenings that we schedule at the school, book nights, all of that's going to look very different, especially in this first semester. That doesn't mean it's impossible. We can still pull it off. We can still do those things, but it is going to require us to be excited and to, you know, be willing to put ourselves out there and try something new. It's not always easy, is it? So as you think about your own emotional well-being, and you think about the students that are going and the families that will be joining you this school year, what superpower can you bring to the classroom this year that will help others to feel grounded and belonging and respected through this process? I know y'all have lots of superpowers. What might they be?
I think just shared excitement about being in school and having a really good outlook. That whole, you know, excitement of energy, and, you know, we're trying to do more of an outdoor classroom and trying to get kids outside than inside. So I think just your whole, you know, body language and how you present yourself to people, I guess.
Right. I'm excited about your outdoor classroom. You've shared that. That's gonna, I hope that works. I hope, and it should. I don't know why it would not. What else? What other superpowers might you bring?
I think being able to make mistakes, or I don't know what the exact word is, but just showing them it. And I do this all the time because I lose my glasses or whatever, and the kids think I'm pretty silly, but, you know, maybe putting your mask on upside down, or just like, oh my gosh, I forgot. And just that grown-ups, you know, that we're learning and we're not perfect. So that, yeah, so that we can be more childlike, I guess, and naive about things in a way that we know is purposeful.
I'm seeing flexibility, being honest, spreading kindness, our humanness, absolutely. This is a wonderful list of superpowers. And be kind to yourself. Thanks, Nicole. That is so important. Our own emotional well-being is going to really drive our ability to, our energy, our ability to really get up and do this every single day, and to face whatever challenges and changes come up, because we know they'll, right? Definitely. Anyone else have a superpower they'd be willing to share? Consistency, for sure. I think for me too, I think that as I look at this little guy, this is exactly what I hope. They come into the classroom feeling this confident and this ready to learn and ready to be there. Though we know that some will not, and they will need us in lots of different ways this year. All right, and Gosh, this hour went so fast today. Questions, thoughts, things that you would like to share with one another? Another resource that I shared today that should be coming to you, if it hasn't, I think it's already come to you actually, is a distance learning guide that the Ohio Department of Education put together. It has lots of wonderful suggestions for all grade levels about keeping the focus on the child and the homeschool relationship in ways that we can continue to build and foster those important relationships as we go. Anything else today that you all would like to share with one another? All right. Please do reach out. I'd love feedback on the case that we shared. It is a living document on our side too. So if you have come across some fantastic resources that you feel other pre-K through second grade teachers could benefit from, we would love to, I'd love to hear it so I can add it in. That would be fantastic. Let me also give you your QR code for the training today. And again, this you'll get this PowerPoint deck too. But I want to thank you all for hanging in and being a part of the series with us over this summer. I wish you the very best of luck. I hope things go wonderfully and be well, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too, Janice. Thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.